All right, so we are live with the last speaker session of the summit before I wrap it up later on. And now I am delighted to introduce somebody that was on my podcast a little while ago now, and really enjoyed talking to her. And she talks about limitless potential, and my podcast is all about maximizing potential. So obviously a lot of synergies there. There's this Vanessa Jane Patrick, who is a personality profiler, international speaker, group trainer, and transformational coach who empowers individuals and teams to discover who they are, have the courage to live authentically, and to meaningfully contribute to the world through online and offline seminars and courses. And excuse me, Vanessa, you are coming to us all the way from Australia, and it's Melbourne, Australia, right?
That's right. It is Melbourne, Australia. So the sun is literally just coming up right now. I've got some lighting to help me out, but grateful to be here.
Yeah, and it's the future as well, right? It's Monday morning.
That's it. I'm all the way out in the future. It's looking bright. It's looking good.
And the future's bright, so that's good news. All right. So Vanessa, I'm going to turn off the video and I'm going to hand it over to you, and you can take it away.
Awesome. Well, I'm very excited to be here. When Chris mentioned what he was doing, talking to the youth, talking about leadership, I was like, wow, what an amazing opportunity. So quickly just wanting to thank everybody for having me here, and particularly for you, Chris, to put all of this together. I know the work and the sweat and the tears that it can, you can go through to put it all together. So that is awesome. Now, today I'm talking about actualizing your limitless potential for your most authentically inspired life. And ironically in life, a lot of people will tell you what you should be doing, but this can lead you, can lead all of us into kind of what I perceive to be the biggest trap for all of us in life, and one in which I stayed very stuck in for the first 25 years of my life without even knowing. So that's where I want to start. It's going to be a very positive, potential seeking presentation, but we've got to start where it matters. And that is with this, which is, my slides work. Oh, I hope I haven't gone too far. Oh yeah, I did. Anyway, so today I want to share with you the number one regret of the dying, which is, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself rather than one I felt was expected of me. Now, this came from a hell of a lot of research from a woman by the name of Bronnie Ware. She's actually written a book. I highly recommend it. It's called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. And she was an Australian palliative care nurse who interviewed all of her patients at the end of their lives. And she asked them, what's the number one thing that you regret the most? And she correlated all the data. There ended up being these 5 regrets that were universal. And this was the most prevalent one. This was the one that most people really had a hard time with. And, growing up, I had a real talent for living to the expectations of others. I knew exactly who I needed to be with all the different groups of friends and families and teachers and so on that I needed, to be who I needed to be in order to get their love, their connection, their acceptance, their approval. There's a lot of people out there, like I said, that say, you should do this or you should do that and you shouldn't do that and you shouldn't do that. Right. And so you end up kind of going, okay, well, you kind of need people telling you that in the beginning of your life so you can work things out. But at some point, it becomes unhealthy, So ultimately, what this kind of led me to dive into a part of my story, because I felt like, a lot of the presentations I do are talking into key concepts and models, but today with what we're talking about and being, in talking to young adults, I felt like it's necessary to share a little bit more of story, make it a bit more relatable and not just give you more concepts and models. We can certainly give you those, but I wanted to share my journey in the hope that it helps and supports you guys to just wake up to where you may be not living authentically and maybe living to the expectations of others, so that you don't fall into the trap of being another statistic like a lot of us do at the end of our lives, having that regret. I wish I had had the courage to live a life true to myself, not one that was expected of me. So I was the chameleon, right? Like you know, molded myself to the different groups and friendships I had, and different relationships and family relationships I had, and basically showed up as this completely different person in these different areas of life, and didn't know who I was. I didn't know who I was outside of my reflection from other people. You know, it led me to be really confused about who I actually was and having my own sort of identity. It led me to a lot of escapism and distraction, you know, with unhealthy and dangerous decisions. It led me to not knowing, you know, what I wanted to do with my life, to the point where I just even let my brother pick my degree and that I'd study at university, which I absolutely loathed and pushed through. But in order to get through doing something in my life that was totally out of alignment with the truth of who I was, I had to have some sort of avenue for escape from reality, you know, and that led me to partying 6 days a week, you know, and creating a pretty unhealthy lifestyle for myself. And, you know, flashing forward, it was only when my new addiction to health and fitness started to outweigh, you know, my party lifestyle. That was when I, you know, shifted into out of the party lifestyle into my health and fitness, and used that to continue my escapism from really what was an inner voice that all of us have, that knows when you're being true to yourself and when you're not. But it's oftentimes really scary to listen to if you don't know what you'll do otherwise, right? So this kind of just led me into working at a bank after I finished my business degree that my brother picked for me. And I realized at this point that I'd made the wrong choice, right? Like I was still, you know, having no idea of what I should be doing with my life. And I had no idea that this whole realm of personal development and thinking about your potential, and even questioning, you know, what your path was, I didn't really know what that even existed. And so at that point, I thought the only way to develop oneself was to get another university degree. And so not knowing what the hell I wanted to do with my life still, I decided, okay, well, if I do law, that's going to open up the most doors, right? And, you know, and that would be the logical option, you know, and at least that's how I deceived myself into believing, as I attempted to live up to my perception of what the expectation was on me that I needed to live up to. So my biggest wake up call, you know, from this whole scenario really came at an amazing event. So you guys might have heard of somebody by the name of Tony Robbins, you know, and so what actually happened for me was there was that little nagging voice that made me feel sick. It was always trying to tell me, you know, what are you doing? You're not a lawyer, you know, you're a people person. This isn't the right path for you. But I kept ignoring that inner voice, and it was getting louder and louder and starting to impact, you know, how I was really showing up in life. It was making me withdraw from people, not want to interact with anyone at my university or even really my family or my friends. I really felt like, you know, someone was going to see how much I was lying to myself. And I was so sick and worn out from trying to pretend to myself that I was on the right path. You know, it even got to the point where my body just shut down. You know, one day I couldn't even get off the floor. I was just curled up in the fetal position. I'd never felt so sick in my entire life, you know. And so back to this event, which was kind of just fell into my lap when I met a new partner who said, hey, there's this guy, Tony Robbins. I've got a ticket to his event. Can I take you? And I thought, okay, I'll check this guy out. I'll give it a go. And I'm so grateful that I did, because getting myself to this event, you know, it was called Date with Destiny. And it was definitely my date with my own destiny. You know, that inner voice had been getting louder and louder. And now I was finally in an environment where I was forced to ask myself questions that I'd never dared ask myself before. You might want to ask those questions for yourself as well. I asked myself, what do I really value? What do I really want to do with my life? What's my true calling and my purpose? Why am I even here? And that nagging was getting more and more intense, telling me to wake up. You're not meant to be a lawyer. That was kind of what was going on. And my internal response was, I know you're right, but it's too late now. I have to finish what I started. I'm too old to make a change. That's what was going on for me. And it was in that moment that, I'm in this room full of 2,000 people, and, I'm having this internal dialogue, and this woman in the audience across the room standed up, and she was handed the microphone, and she said, "Wow, I'm so filled with gratitude. I feel so incredibly lucky to have made the discovery that I've just made." And Tony Robbins asked her, elaborate, like, what's happened? What's going on for you? And she said, "Well, I'm 65 years old, and I've been an incredibly successful lawyer since my 20s, but I've been through 4 divorces. None of my children speak to me, but I've just finally realized that I became a lawyer because I felt that's who I needed to be in order to get the love from my dad. I thought that's, who I was expected to be accepted. And I now have just given myself permission to uncover what I truly want to do with my life. For the first time in my life, I feel free, I feel empowered, and I'm so young to have made this discovery. I've got so many years ahead of me, left to live true to myself." And it was at this moment, having this inner battle and on this dialogue, that's a new word, kind of makes sense. Hearing and experiencing this woman's revelation, I had my own. I thought to myself, how can this woman, age 65, think of herself to be so young and ready to make the change when I'm sitting here age 25 feeling too old to make the change? In that moment, everything shifted for me. I finally gave myself permission to stop, living a life I felt was expected of me, and actually start living a life that was true to who I was. I started my journey towards, true self-awareness and self-love, and a journey that I'm sure is never going to end. I realized that my potential was not limited to the expectations of others. So that's what I want to dive into with you guys. I want to just remind you, if you don't know this already, that your potential is absolutely limitless, but you won't be motivated to actualize it, to make it a reality, to actually step into your potential, unless you're actually authentically inspired by what you do. If you truly wish to experience, a really meaningful and fulfilling life, then your goal is to actualize your potential. Most people settle for a life of mediocrity. They don't heed the calling to that inner part of them that knows there's more that they have to experience, more that they have to contribute. They're too afraid of the judgments and the criticisms and the opinions of others, to be courageous enough to listen into that voice that knows you're not really living authentically, or you're not really on the right path, or you're not really into what you're learning about, or the path that you've chosen to get on, and they end up, opting to just kind of live to those expectations and numb out to that inner calling, and it's really few people that step into actualizing their potential in a meaningful way, to create the kind of life that they're truly fulfilled by, that they're proud of, that they want to jump out of bed for, and you could be one of those people. You're so lucky, to be at this young age. If you're a young adult listening to this, no matter how old you are, like I said before, age is actually irrelevant. But whatever age you are, to make a realization that you have potential that can be accessed, and it's limitless if you tap into what authentically inspires you. And that's ultimately the pathway to your maximized fulfillment in life. When we live to the expectations of others, we're never living our own life. So the idea is to really make your life worth your heartbeats. What would that be to you? and to make your inner voice louder than anyone outside of you. So quickly, I just wanted to touch base on the difference between motivation and inspiration. All right. So motivation, it's fleeting. It requires constant stimulation from external sources. People telling you, hey, I'll give you this if you do that, right? I'll give you love and acceptance and approval if you do that. I'll give you money if you do that, you know, and it's always living to the expectations of outside sources. So it can get you going, but then you stop, and then you need another external source to just motivate you into action, right? And authentic inspiration, that's what you want to aim for. That's sustainable because it comes from within yourself. You're in the driver's seat and you're fueled by what is meaningful to you. Actually, authentic inspiration is a secret that most people don't know about, and it's ultimately your pathway to reaching your most fulfilling potential, right? Because inspiration, it's harder, right? Because you have to do the work to discover who it is that you are, what it is that you want, and have the courage to go after it. Most people opt for what they think is the easy path, which is just everybody else, just tell me what I should do. I'll just do whatever you think I should do, right? Because I don't trust that I have the answers, and I'm just going to do whatever anybody else says. But the easy path always becomes the hardest path in the long run, right? Look at the number one regret of the dying. You know, they spent their lives living to the expectations of others, letting the outside world determine the course of their lives. And that's what they ended with. Very unfulfilled life, mediocre existence. So you might think that, oh, that's tough, like getting to know who it is that I am. What am I inspired by? Who am I really? You know, but that's ultimately what you think is the harder path in the short term becomes the easiest path in the long term, because you get to live an inspired life. All right. So how do we start this journey of really getting to know, like, how do I tap into, you know, how I'm maybe deceiving myself, how I'm not being authentic to myself? And basically between the ages of 0 to 7 years old, we all decided who we needed to be in order to be loved and approved of and accepted by our family or our friends or the people that we looked up to. You know, I can personally look back to one of my first memories as a little girl, and my mum used to drive me to school each morning, and she used to say to me before I got out of the car, you know, pretty much your potential is limitless, right? She gave me that message, but she'd say, you know, Vanessa, you could be anything that you want in your life. You're so smart, right? And she would say this every single morning, and it'd be swiftly followed up with a, you know, so what do you want to be? You know, and I remember one morning I knew what I wanted to be. You know, like I was very young. I probably was, you know, about 6 or 7 years old. And I said to my mum, I'm like, I want to be a policewoman, right? Because my best friend's dad was a policeman, and I just thought he was super cool and he did all this cool stuff, right? And so my mum's excitement when she was like, what do you want to be? Like, you could be anything, quickly, you know, shifted when she heard my response to just like, you know, the smile dropped, the eye contact disappeared. And she said, Vanessa, no. That's so dangerous. Why on earth would you want to do that when you could be a doctor or a lawyer, you know? And it was in that kind of bittersweet moment that really a new belief system was installed within me. You know, I now believed that I could achieve absolutely anything I wanted to in my life, but at the same time, I didn't have permission to do anything outside of what was expected of me. You know, I come from a very highly academic family who believe that if you don't get a degree, you know, you're less valuable in this world. You're not going to be happy. So I want to ask you, who did you decide to be? You know, who to be loved and accepted and approved of? And a great way to connect into this is we tended to mold ourselves to the person that we craved the most love of in our family. So, you know, for me, that was my dad, and he was very academic, engineer. I thought I need to be on a subconscious level, not consciously. You know, I thought, okay, I need to live to the expectations there and become a lawyer, right? And fend for myself and, you know, create my own income. And that will prove to my dad that I'm lovable, right? So I want to ask you, who did you crave the most love and attention from when you were growing up? Maybe it was your dad. Maybe it was your mum. Maybe it was a grandparent. Maybe it was a teacher. Maybe it was an older sibling. Whoever it was, who was that person that you craved the most love and attention from? And the reason why I ask you that is because I want to ask you, who did you perceive that you needed to be for them in order to get their love and their acceptance and their approval? Because this will give you so much light and wisdom on exactly, who you've kind of decided to be in this life at this point, in order to get that love and acceptance and approval. But as you can see, you decided that at such a young age, between 0 and 7. And so most adults in this world are living a life that was decided by them at the ages of between 0 and 7. And they've never thought to question that again. And they don't understand why they're not fulfilled in their lives, because they've never taken the time to listen in and do the work to get clear on who they are, what they want, and have the courage to go after it. Okay, so I want to give you these kind of golden nuggets in the hope that you will tap into this, after you listen to this and after you finalize this amazing summit, to really tap into that. And I want to give you the ticket out to freedom, because sometimes when we're living to the expectations of others, we are too afraid on a subconscious level to even acknowledge that, because we still want to belong and we don't want to upset them. But the truth is, they just want you to be happy. Whoever you thought you needed to be, somebody other than who you are, whoever you've molded yourself to the expectations of, they ultimately, if they love and care about you, they just want you to be happy. It's just that their model of the world says that in order for you to be happy, you have to do certain things or you have to be a certain way, based on their own experiences. And, you need to be willing to show the people who love you that there is another pathway towards fulfillment that may not match theirs. And I know this was one of the biggest things that held me back from listening to that inner voice, was I knew the repercussions in my external world. I knew exactly what my parents were going to say and do. And at that time, my deepest fears actually came true. My parents did call me a failure, did tell me I had to finish what I started, did get really angry and upset at me. And my mum, even deleted me out of her life for a little while, deleted me off Facebook, deleted me off her phone, deleted our connection for a while. And I wouldn't have been able to handle, those experiences from the people I loved the most if I hadn't tapped into my authentic inspiration. Because when you tap into what authentically inspires you and you start to listen to that inner voice and you just make decisions, even if it is just to get off the wrong path, you develop this level of certainty within yourself that's unshakable, that you wouldn't have known existed before you tapped into what authentically inspires you. But I guarantee you it is there. The scariest thing is to allow that voice to come up and to tap into what's true for you. And you'll then get the realization that they just want you to be happy. They've got a different model of the world. You're here to show them a different way, and now I'm so grateful that particularly my parents are my greatest supporters on my journey. My mum even works in my business, so it's you may need to, go through the challenge to come out the other side, but nothing in life is really, we're really worthwhile, is going to come easy to you. So you just have to bear that in mind and know they want you to be happy. They don't want you living to their expectations and living a truly unhappy life, and because of their expectations, having the number one regret of the dying. They love you. They care about you. They want you to be happy. Just show them how and discover it for yourself. And, those deepest fears that we're talking about, they're universal. Every single one of our deepest fears, we might call them all these different things, and we think we're all so unique and different to everyone around us. But truthfully, every single human being has these two universal fears that are driving everything that they do. Number one, that they're not good enough in some way, shape, or form, not smart enough, beautiful enough, good enough in whatever realm that is, healthy enough, attractive enough, whatever it is, right? Good enough at this. We all have those universal fears, no matter who they are, no matter how put together they seem to be. We've all got the fear of a variety of sources that we're not good enough in some way. And what's really below that, what's really driving that, is that if we're not good enough in whatever way, shape, or form, we won't be loved. All right. And that's really the name of the game. So if you can just realize that all those deepest fears that you have, that you're just terrified of bringing up to the surface, actually all of us have them. Those people that you look up to and admire, they have these same fears. The difference is you know about them and you're inspired by them because they don't let their fears overwhelm them. They choose authentic inspiration, which is the only thing that's really going to break you free of those challenges and those deeper fears. So my message to you is a couple of these things, which is, firstly, be willing to make mistakes. Sometimes we know what we don't want before we know what we do want, right? Just like me, I had no idea what the next path for me was, but I was very clear that I knew I was on the wrong path to become a lawyer. And when I gave up what was wrong, I opened the pathway to discover what was right, and it started me on the whole journey that I've been on back since 2013. For the past 7 years, I have been dedicated to, in studying what I'm inspired by. At school, I kind of just did whatever I had to because it wasn't really all that inspiring to me. There were a couple of bits and pieces that were a little bit, or a couple of different teachers that I really liked. So maybe that got me more engaged. But at the end of the day, I became a lifelong learner when I decided to tap into what would authentically inspire me and get to do what I love and love what I do. So failure is your friend. It's not something to be terrified of. Failure is just, you've probably heard this, but failure is just, just a response. It's more information about what works, what doesn't work. And you can only truly fail in the bad sense in life by not trying, by not discovering who it is that you are, not discovering what it is that you want, and not having the courage to live a life true to yourself. Right? So the biggest lesson that I could hope to instill upon you is to listen to your inner tuition. You might have heard of intuition, but I'm talking about that inner tuition, that inner teacher that we all have within ourselves, because you always have the answers within you. You just need to learn how to turn down the voices and the judgments and the opinions of others and turn up the volume on your own internal wisdom. So that's basically all of the work that I do in what I call the Limitless Potential Academy. It's all been about, using myself as the human guinea pig of all things personal development and, being able to systemize and simplify all these different tools and perspectives that we're not taught at school, that will really open our minds to actually making ourselves our own leader. So I do have a gift that I wanted to give, and it was just kind of a last minute thing. But for any of you young adults listening who are committed to living to your highest potential, I actually want to give you a scholarship to an entire year worth of all of my academy, my Limitless Potential Academy. Each month you get new trainings. I get to work with you, all of that stuff. So anybody interested, you can reach out to me. I can talk with Chris about this, but I'm going to be giving it to 3 people. So if you reach out to me and you're committed to reaching your potential, that will be an entire 12 months, full scholarship to my Limitless Potential Academy, because they're all the tools I wish I had when I was your age, to break through and stop living a life that's inauthentic and start living a life true to myself. So at the end of the day, become your own leader. Life needs to be lived in order to be understood. So go out there, live authentically, follow your inspirations, show us all your boldly pursued limitless potential. And I really hope that today's message has, just sparked that inspiration for you to heed the calling that's within, to actualize your limitless potential for your most authentically inspired life. And thank you so much for having me. Hope this has served you. And thanks again to you, Chris. You're such a superstar. I can't believe what you've managed to create and the amazing individuals you've brought together over this weekend. So thank you for all you do and the opportunity to actualize my potential today.
Thank you, Vanessa. I appreciate it, and thank you for participating. It's an honour to have you on, and obviously we got a lot of synergies, which is great. And yeah, I'll probably set the bar pretty high considering what we did in 3 weeks. So when we do the next one in probably 3 months, we're going to have to be like even better. So that's good. But yeah, I love what you said. I love the number one regret of the dying. Something that I wrote down as well that you said, which is make your life worth your heartbeat. Mm-hmm. I love that saying. Right, yeah. Make your life worth your heartbeat. So again, people, you need to realize that. And I think one of the messages that's been going out all over this weekend is you are good enough, you are worthy. Right, you've got that choice, and you need to step up and step out and live that choice. So great messages, and I thank you for that. I knew it would be good, and you didn't disappoint, so appreciate that. Now you can go and have your coffee and maybe have a little bit of a nap before you get on today.
I do need that. Thanks, Chris, and thanks, everyone.
All right. Thanks, Vanessa. Bye. All right, everybody. So that's the last of the speakers.